Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my pregnant entitled Karen of a neighbor repeatedly trespassed on my private property. She claimed that she has a right to be in my garden and use my pool because she is pregnant. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the story. I have always considered myself to be a fairly easygoing person with years in retail giving me more than enough practice with hard-to-bear people, but I can safely say that I've never been in a position like the one I was in last month. I've been living in my neighborhood for around 6 years, and in that time nobody new has arrived and no one has left. I only have one neighbor as I live on the end of a street, and since the day I moved in all those years ago, we never had any issue. She seemed to keep to herself and just get on with things, something which I would never see an issue with. Then, roughly 7 months ago, I bumped into her in our local grocery shop and spoke to her briefly, and that is when I found out about her pregnancy. I congratulated her, of course, and did not think much of it from that point onwards. Around the same time, I had started looking into getting my garden cleared of all the overgrown weeds and hedges and potentially adding a pool. After I totaled up everything, I ended up paying $1,200 for a company to come and clear away all the overgrown vegetation in my garden and freshen up the grass. I must admit, after it was done, I was more than shocked by how my garden looked. Which led me to take the splurge and buy a pool. The pool alone costs around $35,000, which, ashamedly, was a big chunk of my savings. However, it was definitely worth it once it was done. I had noticed during the stages of the pool being fitted, my neighbor would come around more to say hello and just talk to me in general, occasionally about the pool. I figured she was simply interested, and given the noise disruption it must be causing and the lack of complaints from her, I figured there was no harm in telling her about it. I also made the mistake of saying that she would be welcome to come around and use it once it was finished. It took around 4 months for it to be fully built, and once all of the equipment was put away and the pool was filled, it looked incredible. I bought some lawn chairs and pool floaties to add to it. 1 week after it had finished, my neighbor came over. "Hey, your garden looks amazing. Mind if I come and check it out?" She asked once I had opened the door. "Sure, go right on through to the back," I replied, knowing I had little to do that day and seeing no harm in her having a look. We chatted back and forth for a little while, and she asked me quite a lot about the pool and mentioned that she might get one too, seeing as how much she liked the results of mine. I told her I would go inside to fetch some drinks and snacks. While I was standing at the kitchen window, I watched as she removed her dress, revealing a bathing suit, and slowly lowered herself down into the pool. I stood there for a moment in shock, wondering if maybe she had mistaken what I meant when I agreed to let her have a look at the pool. I figured it was not really a big deal and decided I would grab my own trunks and join her. We had quite a nice evening, and eventually she left, saying she had a great time and that the water relieved lots of tension from her swollen belly. The following day, which was a Monday, I came home from work and visibly jumped when I saw her, aka my neighbor, in my pool relaxing on one of the pool floaties I had bought. I could see some sort of yoga mat was stretched across my lawn, which I assumed she had brought over. Hey? I asked skeptically as I stepped into my garden. "Oh, hi, would you mind passing me my drink?" She pointed over to a glass of water that she must have brought from her house. "I don't know how to get it to you," I stated, given that she was in the middle of the pool. I watched as she rolled her eyes and slided off the floaty, swimming over to the drink. "Why are you in my pool? And where's this yoga mat come from?" I asked, trying not to sound too confrontational, but still curious as to what on earth was going on. "Hun, I'm pregnant," she replied condescendingly, staring at me like I was a child. I stood in shock for a moment, having no idea what she was hinting at. I also was slightly put off by the sudden apparent change in her attitude. "I'm sorry, but I would really appreciate it if you could message me if you would like to come and use my pool, or my garden for that matter," I said with a sigh, not really knowing how else to say it. "Why are you being so difficult? You know, I'm heavily pregnant and I really need some time in this pool." "It's not like I'm damaging it or anything," she moaned, jumping back onto the floaty that she had abandoned. Deciding I was way too tired to deal with this, I went inside and just waited her out. She then left after a couple of hours, going back to her garden via a large gap in our fence that had been there for years. For the next week, the same thing happened day after day. Some days I would find her lounging on one of the garden chairs I had put out, other days she would be in the pool, and occasionally she would be doing yoga. I was starting to wonder if she ever had to leave the house for work or something. By the 5th day of this occurring, I decided to try and speak to her again. Please stop coming onto my property without my permission, and if you really need to spend some time in a nice garden, why don't you have your own cleared up and build a pool of your own? I was beginning to lose my patience, slowly losing the will to keep unconfrontational. Listen, I'm the pregnant one here, okay? If I say that I need to relax in this pool or enjoy the garden for the sake of my baby, then I will do so. I need it more than you. And besides, why should I have my own pool built when there's one next door? And this garden is much more spacious and cleaner than mine. It's better for the baby, she retorted, not even bothering to open her eyes. Please leave, Karen. I sighed, hoping she would just leave and I wouldn't have to continue arguing. She ignored me and that's when I finally snapped. Look, I know you're pregnant. But if you don't stop trespassing on my land, then I'm going to have to get the police involved and I really don't want to have to do that. Her eyes snapped open and she stared at me with such fury that I thought she would pop a blood vessel. Without saying anything, she climbed out of the pool and stormed back over to her garden. I stood outside until I heard the slamming of her door. Thinking that was the end of it, I went inside my house and went looking for some pills to soothe my suddenly throbbing head. Less than 10 minutes later, I heard police sirens outside and then 3 loud knocks at my door. What can I do for you? I asked once I opened the door to 2 police officers. This lady claims you are squatting in her house, one of them stated, motioning to my neighbor who was still in her bathing suit beside them. What? I questioned, flabbergasted by the accusation. Don't act like you don't know. You just walked into my home and claimed that you were now living here. Why else would I be in my bathing suit if I hadn't just been relaxing in my own pool? My neighbor spoke with such rage that I was sure she was convinced about the lie herself. I told the officers to come in and wait in the living room while I go and find the deeds to the house to prove that I owned it, something I never thought I would have to do. Thankfully, I found them quickly and was able to resolve the situation before it escalated. The cops filed a report claiming that my neighbor had wasted police time and said that she would receive a letter with a fine for doing so. She tried to argue her case by using the fact that she was pregnant, but they were not having any of it. They escorted her away from my property and left, leaving me thoroughly perplexed as to what had just happened. The next day on my way home from work, I stopped by the local DIY shop to find some supplies to put a plan into action that I had thought of on the way home. Once I got home, my neighbor was back in my pool. I realized then that I should have lodged a complaint with the police while they were there. When she left hours later, I quickly patched up the hole in the fence with the wood and nails I got from the store. Hey, what are you doing? She screamed, coming out of her house. How will I get over now? I demand that you give me full access and rights to this garden space and pool right now. I have priority. I didn't say anything until I had finished patching the hole. If you ever come back over here, I'll call the police on you. And thanks to your false report, I'm sure they will be more inclined to side with me. Now have a good day, I stated, turning around and briskly walking back into my house while she cursed at my back. Since then, she never came back, and every pool party I had from that day on, I rejoiced in watching her face fill with envy from the window of her house. And yeah, ripe stars, even though of course I will give props to OP for fixing the hole in the fence in the end and making Karen jealous. However, I still feel like OP should have called the police way sooner on Karen and maybe even got a restraining order or something. But I guess then again, it's also good to not make enemies with your neighbors unless you have to. However, I suppose not every single story can end with someone getting arrested or thrown into jail or something. The next one is a revenge story. When my new neighbor and I met for the first time when she moved in, I was holding my 8-month-old girl. New neighbor, I sure hope that baby doesn't make a lot of noise. I'm so not up for that. A bit surprising when she did almost all of her home improvement from 20 o'clock until midnight and the tone was set. She complained about baby noises and just about everything we did in the house and or garden to the housing corporation, and she didn't want to sit down for a talk. So I simply ignored her for ages and she ignored me too, apart from some nasty comments to friends or her boyfriend about me, but no idea why I deserved that. However, then some random Friday in the summer, the doorbell rang. A nice lady told me that my neighbors had their keys hanging in their lock and nobody was home as she tried the door. Maybe I wanted to take the keys. Of course I did not, but I did feel bad because I saw them before when they left the house with swimming stuff, so I guessed they would be away for the day. I then walked over, I locked their door, tossed the key into the letterbox, and as soon as it fell on the floor, I realized what I had done. I still hoped that they had a spare key, but it turned out they didn't, so they had to call a locksmith on Friday evening. which means the weekend payment was in order. Over 300 euros. I loved it eventually. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I don't know how it is in the US, but in the EU and pretty much every single EU country, locksmiths are so damn expensive, it is absolutely ridiculous. That's probably one of the most well-paying professions I've ever seen. Either way, if you enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. The next one is another revenge story. So, I am an elevator technician, and when they break, I'm the one who fixes them. When parts wear out, I replace them, you get it. The other day I was on a job replacing a worn-out emergency light. Back in the day, it was a habit to use the battery of the emergency light to power the elevator siren system. Modern emergency lights have different voltages being LED, so I cannot use the old way of connecting everything. So basically, I have to wire everything up from scratch, including new battery and siren. No big deal, but it takes a little longer to complete the task. Note that this is a 3-stop elevator, ground floor, first and second, and I start with hanging up all my out of order signs and start working on the ground floor. 5 minutes in, I just disassembled the old piece and the story begins. In comes the entitled woman, mid-40s, can walk perfectly fine, carrying one barely filled grocery bag. Me, yours truly, EW, entitled woman, and D, her lovely daughter. And the daughter was around 15 years old. EW, excuse me, is the elevator broken again? Me, not exactly ma'am, I'm changing this, showing her the new emergency light. Because the old one was not working anymore. This will probably take about an hour to complete. At this point her daughter walks in. EW, how am I supposed to get my groceries upstairs? Me, getting annoyed, I look at her bag and give her the, are you effing kidding me? Look. Daughter, Mom, seriously, take the stairs, it's just 2 floors. She was clearly annoyed at this point. EW, no, I pay for this elevator and I need it now. Karen daughter, I'm going up, and takes the stairs. EW, how long is this gonna take? Me, like I said ma'am, about an hour. The woman then sits her butt down on a bench in the hallway waiting for me to finish. Really? Oh well, I do my thing in the cabin, not hurrying at all, mount the new E-light to the ceiling and pack my things to go 1 floor up, to start the wiring on the top of the cabin. EW, you done yet? Me, no ma'am, I still have to wire things up on the top of the elevator. EW, no, I can see that you're done, you're packing your things. Me, yes, I have to take my bag 1 floor up so I can start on the wiring. EW, can't I use it now? Me, no ma'am, you cannot. There is exposed wiring up there. If you use it now, you can cause a short and you'll get stuck. It's really not safe, trust me. EW, fine. And she sits back down on the bench, seriously pissed off. I take my bag and make my way upstairs. As soon as I stand in front of the 1st floor door, I hear the door on the ground floor close, and sure enough, EW went into the elevator and tried to take it upstairs. Hell no, I was not having that. I take my emergency key, and as soon as the elevator started moving, I opened the lock, cutting the safety chain, and the elevator comes to a sudden stop. This scared the crap out of her, and she screams. I open the door, in my most fake surprised voice I yell, "Oh no, what have you done?" While calmly pressing the emergency stop on top of the elevator. Yep, this thing is not going anywhere soon. Me, this is exactly why I said the elevator is unsafe to use now. Well, I'll do my best to get it working again ASAP, but you made a mess up here, so I don't know how long it's gonna take. There was no mess, but I couldn't resist teaching her a little lesson. EW swears, yells, makes a scene. Me, I'll be right back, I have to go to the engine room to see if I can get it working again. I close the door and make my way up. On the 2nd floor, the daughter came out of the apartment because of the yelling of her mother. I quickly explained what happened. Daughter raising her voice, "Oh no, please get her out of there." But then she comes closer and whispers to me, "Don't hurry, make her suffer." That's my kind of girl. Music to my ears. I smile, give her a thumbs up and make my way up to the engine room. I call my supervisor to explain the situation in case she files a complaint. In the engine room I start playing around with the fuses, putting her in the dark because yeah, I have not connected the E-light yet. I play with her for about half an hour before I turn off the emergency stop I activated, the elevator synchronizes to the lowest floor and I wait for the doors to open. Me, please don't ever do that again. EW, white as a sheet, shaking, no, I won't. And she takes the stairs and goes inside. I never heard from her again. I calmly finish my job and leave the building with a smile on my face. Mission accomplished. Edit disclaimer, some people are having concerns about safety. Well, I made sure there never was any risk. It was intentional that the elevator was able to move because I needed it to, otherwise I would not be able to access the car top because of the distance between the floors. I tested all safeties I was gonna need before I started the work. I disconnected the old light, which was conveniently with a plug, and when I tested said car top safeties so there were never any exposed live wires. Also, when I blocked the door with my bag, I never left the site. Also, on every floor the out of order tag was placed over the floor call buttons, and the reason why I initially started working on the ground floor is so people who enter the building can clearly see me working when the elevator was still active. The moment when I started working on the car top and people couldn't see me when entering the building, I did make use of the stop button that I already tested to prevent the elevator from reacting to calls. Every action I took was well thought out, potential risks were considered and actions were taken to eliminate them. If I really needed that elevator to stay where it was, I would make sure it would, and the only people I've seen during that entire time I've been there were the two mentioned in the story. So no, there was never any risk of anybody getting hurt. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I think getting stuck in an elevator is one of those fears that pretty much everyone has, right? It's almost like a primal fear or whatever you call that. Have you ever gotten stuck in an elevator? Let me know how it went for you. And the next one is a pretty interesting saga from r/legal advice, and it is titled, "My ex lied about vaccinating our immune-compromised 8-year-old daughter. She now has chickenpox and is in the hospital. I want my ex as far away from my daughter as possible." Me and my ex split up before our daughter's birth. There were a variety of reasons for this that I won't get into here. One of them was her anti-science beliefs. She does not trust vaccines and doesn't trust science or medicine at all. And well, this sucks because our daughter was born premature and immunocompromised. We have 50-50 custody of her, but due to her condition and my wife's anti-science beliefs, we argue constantly on how to handle her. Well, recently, our daughter has made incredible progress and last year was given the go-ahead to get vaccinated for certain viruses, including chickenpox and the flu. My ex went crazy about this and started making my life a living hell. She also threatened up and down to take me to court. Around this time, I also got a new job that paid a considerable amount more than my old one. When this happened, I decided I wanted to move my girl into a private school that has a program for immune-compromised children and offered to pay 100% of the tuition. And by the way, it's awesome that such a program exists. Anyway, the only problem, for her at least, is that this school requires students to be fully vaccinated up to their medically allowed limit in my daughter's case. My ex fought me up and down on this and we ended up in court. The judge agreed with me and ordered my daughter to be vaccinated. My ex had a full breakdown, but in the end agreed only on the condition that she get to take her to lessen the emotional damage and make sure the doctor does not poison her. I demanded the medical forms confirming this and she agreed, so my daughter finally got vaccinated and last fall started at her awesome new school. Well, last week my daughter got incredibly sick and had to be rushed to the hospital from school. She somehow had contracted varicella, which is chickenpox, despite being vaccinated for it. I have been stressed out from the minute I got the call and confused as all hell how she got it. My daughter must have picked up on this and thought I was mad at her because when I was visiting her in the hospital, she decided to tell me the secret mommy promised to make her keep. It turns out my ex did not vaccinate her. She made my daughter lie about it. Instead, she has been using special oils and salts to keep her from getting sick. But what about the forms I got saying she was vaccinated? They were fake. I called the doctor and it turns out she never went in and he never signed any forms confirming she was vaccinated, so my ex lied and faked forms to convince me that she was vaccinated. I am pissed, to say the least. My daughter is in the hospital because my ex decided to let her beliefs come before our child's health. My ex does not know that I know yet, and I told my daughter not to tell her. I want her gone now. How do I approach this to make sure my ex suffers for this? I have the forms she handed me and text from the day she took her. I also have the doctor on record saying that he never signed off on these and that the ones I have are forged. I am planning on speaking to a lawyer, but I would like to know going in what to do. Thank you." And then a user in the comments said she was ordered by a judge to do something. Not only did she not do it, but she forged medical documents and lied in the process of not doing it. Beyond any other issue that she could get in trouble for, aka neglect, child safety issues, CPS issues, this is unambiguously problematic. If you have a copy of the initial court order, you could probably request one if you don't have it. That should be one of the first things you bring up with an attorney. Well, a lot has happened since that day. My daughter is safe with me and was let out of the hospital about a week ago. She is getting better every day. I know though, you guys want the full story, so here it is. After I made that post, I took the advice given to me, and the next time I saw my daughter, I told her that it was wrong of me to ask her to keep secrets and that it is okay to tell her mom. Along with that, I saw a lawyer recommended to me by a trusted party. When I went in to see him, he told me that this is a case lawyers salivate over and that my ex is in a lot of trouble. I immediately filed for emergency custody of my daughter. I also got into contact with the doctor again and explained the situation fully to him. He says that while he will not be getting lawyers involved, that he wishes for me to submit the evidence to the police and file a report. Along with this, my lawyer has gotten into contact with the court that originally ordered us to vaccinate our daughter and has handed over everything I gave to him. He has advised me to stay quiet on this matter, so I will leave it at that my ex is in a lot of trouble with them. During this time, my ex started to get suspicious. Maybe it was because a friend told her about a post on Reddit and she freaked out. Who knows? A few days later, when I saw her at the hospital, we had an altercation. She became hysterical and yelled various threats and insults at me, including telling me that I want to poison our daughter right in front of our sick child. She was escorted out of the building and the head nurse had banned her from coming back. After this, she sent me a barrage of texts telling me that I'm a monster and that if she had vaccinated her, that she would be dead now. This was sent to my lawyer, and as he puts it, she is what lawyers dream of when they hear who's on the other side of the court. Outside of this, I've been advised to stay as quiet as possible, so I will leave it with this. This week I received emergency custody of my daughter until our custody hearing later this year. I have heard that the DA is slowly getting ready to move forward with a multitude of charges against my ex, and that will land her in jail soonish. And that's really it for now. I'm going to follow the advice given by my lawyer and say nothing else to anyone. I don't want the media involved in this, so for a few reasons I have left this as fake as possible. When it is all said and done, if the interest is still there, I may come back again. But for now, thanks for the advice. And now the final update to the story. I had completely forgotten about making that post, as the last few years dealing with a global pandemic and an immunocompromised daughter have aged me 3 decades. But I saw a post recently talking about my own posts and it came back like a ton of bricks. After wrestling to get back into this account, here I am. I hope you're all interested in an update. Well, to give the short answer first, I have full custody of my daughter and my ex is barred from having any contact with her. The long answer, my court battle between my ex and me was a grueling process, one of the worst periods of my life. It took over 5 months from the time I got emergency custody to get full custody of my daughter. In retrospect, those 5 months were not as long as they felt, but they felt like the longest months of my life at that point. My ex's harassment at that time got worse, even coming to my house and attempting to force herself in to take our daughter. She was arrested for this and charged with attempted forced entry. Before she could bail herself out, the DA decided to throw the book at her for forging medical documents. She ended up spending a month in jail for this, which unfortunately got our custody case contuned. The upside of this was I was given a protective order for me and my daughter out of this, one that bit her in the ass when we finally got in front of a judge. I was given full custody of my daughter. My ex and her lawyer pissed off the judge by trying to claim that I had planned this all from the start, meaning that I supposedly forced her into a corner to vaccinate our daughter so I could use her response to initiate the custody battle.
Her actions, her upcoming hearing for committing felony forgery and forced entry, along with the protective order, convinced the judge that my ex was more than a danger to our daughter. She lost all custodial rights and as of now is not legally allowed to contact her in any form. My protective order was extended by 2 years as well, but I didn't need it as it was only a few months later that she went to prison. My ex pleaded out, they dropped the forced entry charge and she only got 2 years in prison for the forgery, but was still hit with the felony. She was released early due to COVID though. Since then, luckily, I've had no contact with my ex, outside of getting the child support I am owed. I am not really inclined to keep tabs on her personal life, but I know that she went off the conspiracy deep end. Other than that, she has disappeared from my daughter's life entirely. As for me and my daughter, the past few years have been a living nightmare. We moved to a new state and I had to put her into fully online schooling. But our lives are great and amazingly, my daughter was able to get the COVID vaccine only a month ago and is cleared to go to physical school once the summer ends. This saga of my life has taught me so many things and I am grateful every day to have my daughter with me, safe and in a place where she can slowly grow and get healthier. It is kind of touching that so many people are interested after all this time in a normal guy like me and my daughter. I genuinely hope this is the last update I have to make. Thank you for your interest and see you all over the next horizon. And yeah, Ripe Stars, that is indeed a happy ending to an absolutely crazy saga. If you wanna hear more legal advice stories because we have not done them in a while, then please let me know in the comments.
And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.